welcome Assemblymember Cooper. He's here for item 13, AB 906, and you have another item 16, AB 422. So you could sit there for a while. We'll start with AB 906, Sacramento Transit District. Another Sacramento bill. So
thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'd like to begin by thanking you and your staff for working with my office and the sponsors, the City of Elk Grove, on this important district bill. I am prepared to accept the recommended amendments as noted in the analysis, which will result in AB 906 being amended to simply repeal Section 102100.9 of the PUC Code. AB 906 will now ensure that Elk Grove's proportionate share is negotiated with RT in the same manner as other participating entities within the region. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
okay, other witnesses in favor, please.
Mr. Chairman and members, Jason Gonzalez representing the City of Elk Grove. Once again, we'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, and your staff and the author for their willingness to negotiate the amendments. We've removed opposition, and we respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you. Other witnesses, please. Yeah, Sacramento. RT.
Mr. Chair, with the amendments as proposed, we're removing any opposition to the bill as well.
Thank you. Other witnesses in favor? How about opposition? And I see none. Questions of the committee? We have a motion for this bill. If there's no questions, please call the roll. Or excuse me, can you have a closed statement, please?
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Oh, thank you. We'll call the roll, please.
The motion is do pass as amended. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Cannella?
Aye.
Cannella, aye. Allen? Bates? Aye. Bates, aye. Gaines? Galgiani? Aye. Galgiani, aye. Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. McGuire? Mendoza? Roth? Aye. Roth, aye. Wachowski? Aye. Wachowski, aye. 7-0 on call.
7-0, that bill will be on call. I'd like to thank all the Sacramento County Assembly members and staff and my staff for getting 3 bills that were totally different together, so we finalized the bill so everybody agreed on all the bills. So that took a lot of effort and should be noticed. So thank you for working hard on that, everybody. Okay, we'll go on to Assembly members' second bill, and that is item 16. This is AB 1422. You have the floor, Assembly member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. First, let me begin by accepting the committee's amendments. I think they make the bill much better. AB 1422 adds transportation network companies to the list of entities that are required to enroll in the Department of Motor Vehicles Employer Pull Notice Program. The DMV Pull Notice Program helps businesses and government agencies ensure that safe drivers are taken off the road by quickly notifying the employers when an enrolled participant is involved in an accident, convicted of a DUI, or any other actions are taken against their driving privileges. Currently, the Pull Notice Program is limited to public agencies and employers. This leaves out TNCs like Uber, Lyft, Sidecar, because drivers utilizing these platforms are independent contractors. Currently, TNCs must manually pull DMV records on a quarterly basis to review driving records, a process that is both inefficient and slow to catch drivers' violations. AB 1422 promotes driver and public safety by authorizing TNCs to participate in the DMV Pull Notice Program and helps improve the safety of passengers utilizing these transportation services. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay. We have witnesses in favor, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, Duncan McFetridge representing Lyft. This is a program that we've wanted to participate in for the last couple of years. We appreciate the Assemblyman's efforts in bringing this to the committee. It's a public safety measure, and we urge your support.
Other witnesses?
Yes, Alex Floyd with Uber. This is an important public safety measure. It allows us to know right away if a driver on our platform has received a DUI or has otherwise committed a serious driving infraction. We take this sort of safety very seriously, which is why we have very strict requirements when bringing drivers onto our platform. For example, right now, a single DUI in the last 7 years will not allow you to drive on our platform, and we want to continue to be able to enforce those high standards while drivers are on the platform. So we want to thank Assemblyman Cooper for authoring this important bill and urge the committee's support. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and members, Matthew Seiberling on behalf of the Riverside Sheriff's Association for all the public safety reasons stated before me. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Don Gilbert for San Francisco International Airport in support. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Robinson on behalf of the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency in support.
Thank you. Other witnesses in favor of this bill? This is AB 1422. Please come forward. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Ryan Sherman on behalf of the Los Angeles County Professional Peace Officers, the Long Beach Police Officers Association, Sacramento County Deputy Sheriffs, and the California Fraternal Order of Police, all in support. Thank you.
Okay. How about witnesses opposing this bill? Please come forward. Welcome. Have a seat.
Mr. Chairman, members, Greg Cook representing the Greater California Livery Association. As the proponents have stated, this is a public safety bill. We support that. We strongly support the DMV pull notice program. Where we have a problem with the bill is the identification of participants, one of the companies calls them partners, who are driving the vehicles as employees or independent contractors. We recently read testimony from one of the TNC drivers who indicated that he drives 10 hours every weekend, 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the streets of San Francisco, without meal and rest break, without any checking of what's going on. He's driving 10 straight hours in the streets of San Francisco. Our employees are required by law to be employees. Our vehicle drivers are required by law to be employees of our organization. As a result of being an employee, they not only participate in workers' compensation and unemployment insurance programs, they also are guaranteed meal and rest breaks. They're also guaranteed sick leave. They're also guaranteed vacation time. This is really an interesting model that the TNCs are trying to employ with the TNC business model. Our concern is that we have asked the author to strike any reference to employee or independent contractor because that matter is pending both before the Public Utilities Commission in the ongoing proceeding regarding transportation network companies and in California's courts. So we'd respectfully request that the committee vote against the bill today and urge the author to strike any reference to employee or independent contractor if the bill should go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses opposing, please. Okay. Questions of the committee? Senator Leo.
Don't be scared. I'm going to support the bill. But as we move forward, I just want to continue my caution in this new economy that we want to make sure that it's fair and safe for everyone, for the drivers and for those being driven. The TNCs are very new. I feel that we're doing this in a piecemeal fashion. I think there are 7 bills regarding TNCs. And I just caution us, Mr. Chair, that we make sure we're doing this in a manner which works for everyone. So I will support the bill, but keep my caution moving forward.
We're on a journey, as they say. Okay, other questions? We have motion. You may close.
Sure. No other questions. Thank you for your comments, Senator. I want to thank the panel. I've had personal experience with pull notices. In the Sheriff's Department, I commanded the work release program, and on some days, we had officers driving 1,000 inmates throughout the county, and it was important to get that pull notice if they got a drunk driving or a serious violation. And it did happen sometimes. And we were notified, we were able to get them off the road and not have them drive those folks. So, you know, it worked, it was effective. And I think anybody transporting the public, be it private vendor or a public vendor, should have access to this. So I just want to thank you for your time and respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We have no other questions. Call the roll, please. There's a motion in favor with the aye with amendments.
The motion is due pass as amended and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Cannella?
Aye.
Cannella, aye. Allen? Bates? Bates, aye. Gaines? Galgiani? Leyva? Leyva, aye. McGuire? Mendoza? Roth? Roth, aye. Wachowski? Wachowski, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6-0, we'll leave that on call for other members to vote. And we're going to, Assembly Member Bloom's here. And This is item 15, and we'll go to that item. It's AB 1250, vehicle buses axle weight. You have the floor, Assemblymember.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Should know by now.
We're doing it.
Mr. Chair and members, AB 1250 addresses a longstanding challenge that the legislature first learned about in 2012 when it was discovered that at that time that transit buses may not always comply with the state's bus axle weight limit. Current state law generally prohibits a public transit system from procuring and operating a transit bus whose gross weight on any single axle exceeds a specified limit. That's 20,500 pounds per axle. But tension between this decades-old California law, the goals of which are to reduce damage to roadway by not putting too much weight on the roadway in any one place, and other federal and state laws intended to further societal goals like improving air quality and enhancing mobility for qualified persons under the Americans with Disabilities Act, has resulted in some transit operators being caught between unintentionally conflicting policy and regulatory objectives. And that dynamic led in 2011 to a big surprise for some transit buses near my town of Santa Monica. During the time that I was mayor, the buses were pulled over and ticketed by local law enforcement for weighing too much. Somebody got smart and figured that out and started ticketing the buses. So in 2012 and 2014, the legislature passed and Governor Brown signed into law legislation that ended the stoppage of public transit service while providing a path forward to a long-term solution. And that path has involved transit operators negotiating with cities, counties, and state agencies about the best way to proceed. It's been a very complicated road for everyone, no pun intended, but the bill in front of you today represents substantial progress. And in fact, the core of a new structure and process is in place, but there's more work to be done. I'll let some of our sponsors provide the details, but the essence of the concept is this. State weight limits for transit buses must be recalibrated to acknowledge the policy objectives that have compelled the weights that we see in transit vehicles today, and while ultimately setting a more stringent goal and allowing the industry a few years to get a place where more weight can be taken out of the transit fleet. And the bottom line is the buses weigh more because we've outfitted buses for very good purposes. We've put wheelchair ramps in, and buses that use alternative fuels have equipment that weighs more, and bike racks on the front of buses add a few pounds. So there's progress being made on all these fronts, but in the meantime, we still need all parties to discuss whether and how to treat the larger articulated buses and to come to agreement on how the interim law that we established for 2012 through 2015 should be implemented for transit vehicle deliveries on procurements that were entered into during that period of time. So we're asking that, Mr. Chair, that you pass this bill out of committee today with my commitment that if we cannot work out if we cannot work over the recess to solve these remaining issues, then we'd understand that no bill would leave the floor.
I think one of the issues is Highway Patrol and Caltrans' position on the bill, correct? So that's an issue that you're talking about working that out during the summer. Is that correct?
Yes, that is one of the issues.
Okay, so I agree with that. I think I'm always kind of curious why when you look at a bus, you don't just look at an empty bus. You look at a bus that's generally having, when you look at the weight, you look at the bus with people in it, basically, as opposed to unladen, with nothing. So I think it's logical that when they're riding on the street, they hopefully will have a lot of people in them. So,
one hopes.
So, yeah, so when you look at the proper weight, you want to look at it loaded with a certain number. So I kind of wonder about that question. Maybe some of the speakers can address that. Okay, we're going to hear people that are in favor of this bill.
Mr. Chair, members, Josh Shaw, Executive Director of the California Transit Association. We have our former chair at one of our public transit systems. We've got some other witnesses, representatives of the private sector who supply our buses. I want to be available to answer questions. I've been involved in this issue for quite a long time. Defer our time substantively to our other witnesses. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Paul Jablonski. I'm the CEO of the San Diego Metropolitan Transit System, immediate past chair of the California Transit Association, and was around when we passed 1706 3 years ago. As has been said, we're dealing with a law that's 40 years old. It was before the Clean Air Act, before the ADA, before the CARB initiative, for alternative fuels, et cetera. You know, we are not for heavier buses in the transit industry. You know, we'd like lighter buses because lighter buses are more economical in terms of fuel, and that saves costs. But we're having to deal with the issues as was laid out in complying with a number of competing interests and still operate buses. I was around 3 years ago when we came up with 1706 to put things in compliance, and we've been talking with the League of Cities and the county associations for the last 3 years, trying to come to a permanent resolution of this. And I think we have one. It is one that recognizes what's out there now, and it forces the industry as well as the manufacturers to reduce vehicle weights over the next few years to a level that we think everybody can live with. I do want to address specifically the gross vehicle weight versus the unladen, because I really do. Gross vehicle weight really is something that is born out of the trucking industry, and I think it's very apropos because most trucks will pull into a loading dock in the morning and they'll load up fully. And then they'll start out on a highway trip that could go 3,000 miles. And so they're at capacity, and you have weight limits on roads, and they're going to be at that capacity for the next 4 or 5 days. Buses are not like that. They leave the yard in the morning, they're empty, they're in compliance. And really, if you look at the way transit operates, and we all want full buses, and in San Diego, we have some of the fullest buses in the state. We carried almost 100 million people last year. We have very good productivity. But the reality is the buses are at peak loading only a very short period of time of day. They pull out, they deadhead to the outer terminal, they start to come in, they pick up passengers, they finally get to a maximum capacity, and then very quickly they start letting people off until they get downtown, and they're empty again. And consequently, the times when they are full at capacity is a relatively short period of time of day. And even when you look at who's on the bus and the number of people on the bus, that can vary with any trip. In one trip, you can pick up 2 wheelchair passengers on 2 motorized wheelchairs, and that can change, with everything else being the same, the weights by 1,500 pounds. So when you're talking about gross vehicle weights, that is a very dynamic and very changing thing. And that's why we think the unladen weight is the way to measure how a transit bus should be measured in terms of weight.
Okay. Other witnesses, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is David Warren. I'm the Director of Sustainable Transportation at New Flyer of America. New Flyer of America is the largest transit bus manufacturer in the United States and Canada. And we are known for our innovation and technology development of the low-floor bus in North America, diesel-electric hybrid-type buses, and the world, at the time, the world's largest operating fuel cell bus fleet in the world. So we remain dedicated to innovation and continual refinement of our products. And we're investing heavily in clean-running, fuel-efficient hybrid buses, as well as zero-emission electric trolleys and buses with alternative fuels, and as I mentioned, fuel cell buses earlier, and battery electric buses. And I've been asked to comment on the second observation in the committee's report, which has to do with the maximum allowable weight per axle of 25,000 pounds unladen for buses procured in 2016 and 2017. And this is the first year of our proposed new schedule. And as the staff report suggests, the number appears to be much higher than the weight of the heaviest axle of the heaviest purported bus to be in the California fleets, which at the time was 22,700 pounds unladen. Now that figure was derived back in the 2011 and the 2012 timeframe. And at the time, that was prior to the emergence of the battery electric, longer range, zero emission buses. So when that figure was extrapolated for the typical models and the standard transit buses, that was in fact based on a sampling of all the bus manufacturers and the transit agencies. And what I want to testify today is that I will confirm that since that time frame, with the rollout of the zero-emission buses, primarily the battery electric buses, that New Flyer has in fact built a bus that weighs 24,400 pounds on the rear axle as a curb weight of the vehicle. So we're proposing the starting limit of this to be 25,000 pounds per axle, to include the buses that are currently being manufactured in our time frame. And the aim was to set this level at the 25,000 pound limit and then allow us some time to start the engineering and the validation to begin to reduce the weight of the vehicle. So we appreciate your patience working through this process to find a solution. New Flyer is asking for the support of AB 1250.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers in favor to this bill?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'm Mike Wiley. I'm the general manager here in Sacramento, but I'm also the vice chair of the California Transit Association Executive Committee, and I'm here in that capacity. Here in Sacramento, you see our buses 100% equipped with natural gas tanks. We've been operating natural gas buses since 1993 for over 22 years. In fact, we're right now replacing our third series of natural gas. We've responded to regulatory requirements to run cleaner burning fuel, as well as our local community's desires to clean up the air and clean up our emissions. That equipment comes with a cost. It weighs more, as was already indicated. Tanks on the top of the bus, for example, can add at least 3,000 pounds to the weight of a bus. You've already heard from Paul Jablonski about the added weight from wheelchair passengers and wheelchairs, along with the lifts and so on. Those add anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds to the weight of a bus. And then, of course, a fully loaded bus, just the passengers themselves, add significant weight to the bus. And that's what we're all striving to do, is to fill our buses up and be as productive as possible. While we believe that the state weight limit must be recalibrated, we also know that more can and must be done to address the maintenance and repair cost of our local city streets, county roads, and state highways. That's why our association has voted to support the chair's legislation to provide new revenue to help support our deteriorating roadways throughout California and rebuild our bridges and rebuild our infrastructure. And we also support other measures to increase investments in highways, local streets, and roads. And in addition to that, there's many systems throughout California, here in Sacramento included, where transit systems are actually working with our local jurisdictions to help pay for some of those costs. I can tell you here, with all jurisdictions in Sacramento County where I operate, I have agreements whereby we share the cost for repairs of damage that's caused to local roads.
Yeah, that's kind of common, I think. Bigger districts.
So we're doing our part to help address that. And then finally, AB 1250 is necessary to ensure that transit bus service continues while we work with cities and counties to garner the resources needed to improve and maintain our infrastructure. We urge your support.
Okay, thank you. One more speaker? Yeah. Okay, be brief.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Joe Policarpio from Gillig. We are a manufacturer of heavy-duty transit buses. Our manufacturing plant is in Hayward, California, so locally, where we employ about 800 factory workers and support workers there. We support AB 1250 and are working with the Public Transit Agency members of the California Transit Association and other stakeholders to resolve this challenge. And I'd like to acknowledge a point, though, that the original California Transit Association proposal was for an ultimate weight of 23,000 pounds per axle in 2020. All the manufacturers said that they could meet that. Okay. In our discussions with the League of California Cities, however, we were asked to go further down to 21,000 pounds per axle in 2024. Okay. A couple of our manufacturers indicated that that was too low, so we asked Assemblymember Bloom to put in a compromise, the 22,000 pounds per axle that you see today. Right. This may still be a struggle for some of the manufacturers, but we are all committing to working with our public transit agencies in California to achieve that level of weight reduction. AB 1250 will allow us to continue to deliver California-built buses to California transit agencies and will allow us to also continue our research and development and deployment of zero-emission technology. So we ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Okay, other witnesses in support, please come forward. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, we're ready to go.
Hello, I'm David Feinberg with the City of Santa Monica, and I work for the Big Blue Bus, and we're here in support of the AB 1250.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Robinson on behalf of Solano County Transit, the San Mateo County Transit District, the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, all in support. We really appreciate the association's efforts to find a solution on this long outstanding matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Moira Top here on behalf of the Orange County Transportation Authority in support. And if I may just mention one thing that hasn't really been mentioned much that's of particular importance to OCTA, and that is a clarification in the bill that will enable the grandfathering clause that was put into place last year to actually extend the way I think it was intended last year, which is for procurements that occurred for buses that met the prior requirement. That, of course, it takes a number of months, if not quite a bit of time to move from solicitation to actually putting a bus on the street. And this bill will enable us to do that, and we appreciate your support. Yes.
Transition clause on your contracts. Yes.
Mr. Chairman and members, Delaney Hunter on behalf of the Ventura County Transportation Commission in support.
Steve Wallach on behalf of the Alameda Contra Costa Transit District, the Golden Gate Bridge Highway District, Napa County Transportation Planning Authority, and CALAC, the California Association for Coordinated Transit in support.
Mr. Chair, members, Jason Gonzalez on behalf of Long Beach Transit in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Kurt Evans with the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, and we're in support of this bill.
Come forward, please. Other witnesses in favor?
I'm actually an other, if I may, Mr. Chair.
You're an other, okay. Are you, go ahead. Yeah, go.
Jennifer Whiting with the League of California Cities. We have been in active negotiations for several years with the transit operators on this bill, and we are not quite there yet. However, we are very comfortable with the bill moving forward today. We feel that the negotiations have come further than we ever have in the past, and we are pretty close. As outlined in your committee analysis, there are a couple items still outstanding, one having to do with articulated buses. There is some research showing that articulated buses, even though they may be the same axle weight, do actually cause more damage on streets and roads. We want to take a closer look at that and figure out if there's a way to track that or mitigate that in some way. The second issue has to do with the grandfathering clause. We don't have a problem with grandfathering in the buses that are on the road today or even that are in contract for the next year or so. However, some transit agencies over the last 3 years have put options into their contracts for 10 and 20 years down the road. We want to make sure that those options they don't go through with those options long after this bill becomes law and then the new weights are in law. The third issue you did briefly hear about isn't in your committee analysis. We would like to see the bus weight limits in the end come down 1,000 pounds per axle more than is in the current language. We'll continue having that discussion with transit, and we're comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Lee with the California State Association of Counties. We're largely following the League of Cities lead on this because the issue obviously affects cities a little bit more than unincorporated areas. But we agree that the bill is a good step in the right direction because it puts some of the onus on the bus manufacturers to reduce the weights. There's still obviously details to be worked out, and we look forward to working with the sponsor and the league and transit to address those issues.
Thank you. Other witnesses opposing this bill? Can we have questions of the committee? This is a motion on the bill. No questions? Do you have any closing comments?
Mr. Chair and members, AB 1250 recognizes that we've made substantial progress on a very complicated issue, and it really recognizes that buses have changed, needs have changed, and that we have to make some adjustment. We're pushing industry to ultimately deliver a lighter vehicle. We're asking cities and counties to make some compromises as well, but for today, we're asking that this bill move forward and allow the parties to continue the negotiations on the final details.
Thank you. The only thing I could say is I hope that city governments impose rules on the big bugaboo that my family is the garbage trucks weight. So when you compare it to buses, that's the axle weight on garbage trucks going through residential streets is costing us a lot of money in terms of damage.
If it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, I'll take that bill on after we're done with this.
Well, I think you know, when you have a garbage truck going down their street and you see the damage in the exact spot that it stops to pick up your garbage in front of your house, that's what I'm talking about. And the same thing applies to buses. It's pretty obvious what's causing damage if it's in front of a bus stop. So if we have an attempt to have lighter weight buses, we should attempt to do that. But on the other hand, we have to balance that with we want to keep our bus systems running. We want to have bus manufacturing in California. And so I think this is a good bill in terms of that. It's a good compromise bill. So keep working on it. And I urge and I vote on this item. So call the roll, please.
The motion is do pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Bell?
Aye.
Bell, I. Canella?
Aye.
Canella, I. Allen? Bates?
Aye.
Bates, I. Gaines? Gaines, I. Galgiani? Leyva? Leyva, I. McGuire? Mendoza? Roth? Roth, I. Wykowski? Wykowski, I.
Okay. 7-0. That will be on call for other members to vote.
Thank you.